when we are facing this kind of issue, and we want to make it by a democracy way, we're facing also the difficulties after. So consequences are coming. So our imams and after that faced a lot of problem. So the question is how we can deal with the problem. It's still when we are using the right way, we're facing the problem.
So the problem with gaining the trust again in the democratic values is that even when you use the democratic, even when you use the democratic ways, it's used against you because actually you are not, because of racism or any other ways, you are not supposed to use your democratic ways. So what way should you use? What are you allowed to do? The brother from Belgium. Do you have? Oh no. Okay. It's okay. If you have anything to say, please share. Anyone else in the audience? No? Amir, yes, please.
Yeah. So I think it's easy to feel small in such a difficult matter. You need, I think, redesign is required. A certain level of redesign is required for some of these institutions. From the public opinion, it doesn't seem very democratic when you have 149 countries calling for a stop in the wars and a ceasefire, and then you have one country putting down a veto. So, but this is the way it is by design, and I'm sure there are purposes for it, but it is not looking very democratic from the outside. So it's a certain level of redesign is required, and it's very easy to feel small in that process. How can I contribute to redesigning the Security Council? I would like to add one thing to something that Kim said. There are people in this hall knows more about integration and integrating people in the Norwegian society than I do. But I think the integration ladder in Norway comes with language, mastering that, then it's education, then it's work. And there is one more step, and that is, in my opinion, it's ownership. Mm-hmm. Ownership to where you live, the street you live in, the neighborhood, the city you live in, and then the country you live in. You get the ownership to that country, as you explained. That you kind of felt that, okay, I'm both Austrian and something else, and both, that there is no problem to have both. You have ownership. But when you have a mistrust, you lose part of that ownership. You don't feel that this is something that you can connect to.
But then, Amir, I'm sorry, if we're talking about integration, that it's like you assume that being connected to the situation in Gaza is merely something from people who came from abroad and then they're still attached to Gaza. But of course there are many just original inhabitants of the European countries who have the same feeling about Gaza. So they don't have to integrate, they don't have to learn about the values, they have the same mistrust.
Absolutely.
Kim and then Anna. Oh, yeah. And then.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think I agree you need to try to achieve ownership. So this is what we've actually been working hard to try to achieve, which is not an easy thing. But from where I sit in the municipality, I didn't change anything in the last year. I'm working and connecting to the same people as before. But the whole overarching thing changed. So something which we in the municipality was not a part of has suddenly taken the cohesion away, or the glue, or whatever we call it. And I think this is We who live here, we don't want that. So we want to embrace the 20% which are immigrants in Kristiansand as a part of our society, and which means also that the Kristiansand society needs to change. But suddenly now we are in a situation where something we were not a part of changed the whole thing. So my question to you are, sitting as I am from the municipality, what would you say would be the most important thing that a local municipality like us could do, of course within the realm of what we are allowed to do and what is possible political and everything, but what would be the most important thing that you would want the municipality to do?
You want to start?
That's a question.
Can
Yeah, you do.
I will just try to answer the question by what I was about to say anyways. I think one reason why this cohesion and glue is disappearing, and why it is also, as Alia mentioned, not just for Muslims that have different cultural backgrounds, but also for Muslims that are originally from whatever country they live in. It must be difficult right now. I think what we need to do is we need to change the discourse about Muslims in public. We are seeing in Austria, but in the entirety of Europe, a so-called securitization of the issue of Islam and Muslim. So whenever we talk about Islam and Muslim in the public discourse, it is in the context of security concern, security threat for the state, anti-terror, whatever. Like, we don't talk about Islam and Muslims anymore, or not really, as a religious group, as a faith group, as people who are trying to practice their faith. We don't talk about them in the context of spirituality or any other of those aspects that are what religion is about. We only, or almost only, talk about Muslims and Islam in the context of security concern, how much of a threat can they be to our society. Again, I'm talking mainly about Austria, but I think it does apply for many other countries. So I think we need to change the public discourse about Muslims, because the way we're doing it right now, and the way we're talking about, or that is being talked about Islam and Muslims now, it's hard to nourish positive narratives with this discourse.
I want to say something. This would be okay if we were talking before October, but now we have no time. The world has changed, and we cannot try to maintain what we had without doing something about the crisis that we're facing right now. We have an ongoing tragedy right now in front of our eyes, and this is not a case how we can maintain the cohesion with the older conditions. That is why I was talking before about re-evaluating everything. I sometimes believe that seeking for a just solution for Palestine is also our salvation as a society. Because as you see, the reflexes of each country is different. We see now the American universities revolting, but we have seen it in Europe and other parts of the world revolting against this injustice, because this is not a local issue. It's a universal, it's an international issue. Palestine is not the case of the Middle East anymore. This surpasses also the Muslim issues, the Islamophobia issues. We would deal with Islamophobia issues. We will have these issues, whatever happens, whatever crisis happens. But now we have to stand for that. And those who want to have this cohesion must be fair and must be sincere. And we see it from the youth that they are asking for sincerity and direct, and to reevaluate the older conditions. Because as we saw, it was very easy to fail. It was very easy to see that now we have the International Criminal Court in The Hague. They are trying to issue an arrest warrant for the officials. But at the same time, we have extreme pressure from the American government, the youth is revolting. So this is not the same. We are not in the same condition that we used to be to say that we will try to calm them down. Not only sharing ideas is good enough, but being radical on going deep in the roots, and maybe it's a little more extra work, but I think it will be beneficial, because this is a crisis that will have after that positive, because we are exposed now. We put everything on the table again. We will not cover anything under the carpet right now. We have to be more honest, even if we hurt a little each other, but for the good process. I mean, not for harming, but to create something new. On the same basis of democracy, we can do this, but not to cover this again, because you see, some things cannot be covered. Palestine could not wait anymore. We had a country that half of the country has a military law and the other has civil law. So we were tolerating this for how many years? People cannot stand it. In my country, the dictatorship lasted 7 years. The people could not stand it. So this is why I think it is beneficial. It's not a negative, but it is a painful process.
Yeah. So you say there is a. So the positive note is that everything is on the table, and we have to be honest. And maybe we have to be radically honest and say, well, maybe some of our values has failed, and maybe we can rebuild these values again. Kim, is that something you can work with in your field of work? Is it something you can? Is there any room for these kind of ideas?
Yeah, that's a big question to ask. I just think that we need to be aware. Okay, so we need to be aware about what the situation is and that people are hurting, and we need to find a way to have what my point was is that all these difficult issues that we are discussing, they're not going to go away for some time. In the meantime, we need to be able to have our kids in the same school and to meet in the shop. But this kind of cohesion is, we can see that it as people are talking differently to each other now than they did before. So we need to be, alert about these kind of things happening in society, and make sure this doesn't grow. And then not necessarily agree on everything in Palestine, but make sure that it's okay here.
Okay. Because of the time, I'm sorry to stress you within time. I would like to ask you for some closing remarks in maximum 1 minute. You think you can do that, Amir? Yeah. I know you're a politician, but I like to talk about it.
Resign. In my opinion, we should continue to push forward on the politician, on the politics, and on the politicians to have a more fair move away from the hypocrisy and the double standards which are demonstrated today. By doing so, you also prevent more of this gloom vanishing. Speaking the truth, and I agree with Anna that the Palestinian case surpasses nationalities or even Muslim Islamophobia.
Thank you. Anna?
I will use my minute to say that I am in solidarity with all this Jewish community that is really suffering, that also they need to reevaluate their condition and practice their religion. We have been with them for many years, and what I wanted to say, this is not a religious matter, and we have to acknowledge that and share it with the world, because there is some propaganda trying to say it differently. This is not the case. This is a case for justice and peace, and there is no peace without the justice. We have to work hard on that.
Thank you.
I would like to say that we just all have to take part in stopping this process of silencing. So even if it hurts, as Anna said, and this will hurt for every one of us, we need to speak up, we need to raise our voices, and one aspect of that is this event, which I'm really glad for. So we just need to continue and not let our voices be silenced.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for coming. I want to thank everybody here for coming, because for the municipality this is also important that we put it on the topic and treat it on the agenda and treat it in a professional and good manner and have this kind of dialogue. So thanks for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I would like to thank you as well, especially of course the panel, but also the audience for listening and contributing. We now have a coffee break. Just to remember you, if you want to share anything on social media, please use the hashtag #Meet2024. And after the coffee break, we have our second session about dialogue. So we will continue on this subject and go into dialogue. Is dialogue the way to do it, or maybe one of the ways to do it. So thank you, and have a good day.